Hello, I'm Mark Banfield, the CEO at 1E. For 25 years, our customers have been at the heart of everything we do. And I'm here today to show my commitment to one of our customers, the US Department of Veterans Affairs. 1E is helping VA drive down costs, deliver better and faster outcomes for veterans, their families, and caregivers.
And hello, my name is Frank Harvey, and I'm the Account Director for Veterans Affairs. If you listen to the interviews in this series with the VA OIT executives, you've heard about the role of automation tools and the critical role in order to deliver on the strategic initiative of endpoint visibility and the ability to fix devices before the end user calls the help desk. At VA, 1E Tachyon is currently delivering telemetry and monitoring data on the entire VA estate, both on-prem and at-home devices in true real-time capability.
If you'd like to find out more, come and visit www.1e.com and watch a video and read about Tachyon.
Welcome to today's broadcast. We are pleased to be joined by Mr. Jay Paluch, Director of the Operations Triage Group and the Office of Information and Technology, Department of Veterans Affairs. I am Bill James, your host, President of Federal Business LLC, and it's my privilege to be here today to be joined by Mr. Jay Paluch. Thanks, Jay, very much for being here and sharing your vision and your thoughts with us today.
Well, Bill, thanks for inviting me.
First of all, I'd love to have a little bit of understanding of your background and what you did before you came to the VA and what brought you to the VA.
So a large part of my career was spent with General Electric. Probably, I think, a little over 15 years I was with them. And in the later years, there became that opportunity where we started to see a lot of things happening with the internet. There was also a lot of what we would see as poor performance in a lot of those. And that happened not only within GE's own portfolio, but in a lot of their partners as well. And we saw an opportunity to be able to start looking at that application performance and how we can actually make things better. You know, people at the time, we sit now and we think, we wait a second, 2 seconds, and that seems forever. Well, back then, in many cases, in the late 90s, early 2000s, we would see things at 8 to 10 seconds at a time, and we were accepting of that.
Yes.
But that started to come down, yet the systems weren't following that. We had these very large files being downloaded, very large images, and what could we do to help improve the performance? As part of that was understanding how we are actually able to monitor that and understand how we can improve it. And we started to build out what we refer to as our Application Performance Center. So a lot of the work that I did at GE was helping to figure out how we can better perform our systems, how we can monitor those. As well as a lot of our business partners as well. Me coming to GE is kind of an interesting story. The VA is kind of part of my family. My mother-in-law has worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs, as she did, for well over 25, 30 years. She retired out of there. And she was leader of the Voluntary Services Organization. And one time I was actually there, I think it was actually to pick her up. And she was actually, I was in the background watching her, and she was speaking with one of our veterans. And she was asking him questions, who was actually in to do volunteering himself at the local VA center. And I was listening in the background, and when she was done, she said to him, "Thank you for your service." And the most interesting thing happened after that is he turned around and he says, "No, thank you for your service." And it was at that moment that I realized how important it was that we have people like my mother-in-law that are out there supporting our veterans. And to me at that point in time, it was almost like that light bulb moment where it actually meant more to me than to say, instead of working for other larger companies and that profit aspect of it, was actually what could I do to actually give back as my mother-in-law did. So it was with that I started looking and actually came on board with the VA probably within 8 months after that. And been very happy with that decision I made ever since.
I have to say that in my entire career, my time at the VA was the most fulfilling. Because as an IT person, in many situations, you are many layers removed from outcomes. You write a piece of code and it might get used, and finally somebody's life gets changed by that. At the VA, it's immediate, it's intimate, that we are helping build screens that a veteran touches, either on a mobile device or perhaps a kiosk in a hospital to, set up another appointment or something like that.
Right.
So you're only a screen removed from an outcome or an experience. And to me, that immediacy and the fact that the purpose is so clear, why you come to work at VA, it's on the door when you walk in, right, to serve veterans.
Right.
It's just a completely different experience and totally fulfilling,
It's been wonderful. I've enjoyed actually more than 13 years now, that experience, all through all the different opportunities I've had, and the chance to actually use a lot of what I actually gathered at GE and other companies around that whole aspect. And back to your point of what can we do, although in IT, to actually affect positively not only our users but also our veterans. So either one removed or not, we always know that ultimate goal is actually helping our veterans.
Amen to that. Yeah. Now let me ask you this: IT triage. That's a complicated sounding phrase. What is it, and what does it do, and how is it used?
So the Operations Triage Group was something that we recognized a need for several years ago. We'll leave it at that. And it was at a time when we as an organization would, like any other large organization, you have systems problems, you fix systems problems. But what we were challenged with was how we better coordinate and bring together those situations. We had a couple where they were large reaching across our enterprise, and it affected many systems. And at that point in time, we recognized, well, how might we better be able to not only recognize those, but alert ourselves to there's a problem, and actually start putting tools in place that let us know when there was a system problem and what it might be. All of those together in concert then allow us to be able to find those problems quicker or find them before they actually start to impact our users and our veterans.
Yeah. I give you a lot of credit for developing the concept of the IT triage, because we have always had, I think, good telemetry and what I call the electronic alligator clips on hardware.
Yeah.
But we really didn't do a great job of that in software. I think it's important to be able to build the telemetry, the heartbeat, into the code, but we really didn't do that very well. And then around the time of the Mission Act, we were sweating bullets. Will the IT systems be up and available and operational? And I remember you came to me and said, Bill, we can and we need to do better than this. And I think this is based on your experience in GE, where we can and we need to do better than this. And part of that is standing up of a triage group. So I think that turned a corner in what we were doing in VA and IT in terms of embedding heartbeat inside the software applications, and then frankly allowing the telemetry, the inside of the software applications, to speak to other tools that observe and watch what's going on.
Right.
So what does the environment look like now, without getting into any specific brand name, but what's happening with the tool systems and the observability now that really wasn't happening before? Can you characterize that?
So first off, we see things faster than we did before in many, many cases. So does that mean that we still don't have users calling the service desk and letting us know that we have a problem? No, we still have that, as referred to as a canary in a coal mine effect of letting us know there's a problem. But in many cases, with the tools that we have, and we do have a pretty good sized toolbox, and they all do work very well together, from the ones that tell us of infrastructure issues and tying those into ones that manage our application performance management, or the APM tools, to other ones that actually start to mimic our end users through a synthetic process. All of those together actually help us far better understand things quicker than what we had before. And we're starting to collect the data to show that. Does it mean we still don't have issues, we still don't have outages, or some of them long ones? Absolutely, all those things still happen. But as part of that process of not just the tools, but of understanding how we improve with every single one of those, we sit down and we start to recognize what could we have done better the next time.
Yeah.
And then we put that and we implement that and put that into place. So slowly but surely we start to keep on just scraping off that next layer of paint till we get down to that bare metal again.
Yeah. Now you mentioned application performance monitoring,
Yes.
or APM.
APM.
There's also such a thing as SRE. What's SRE?
So SREs are our site reliability engineers, and they make up a bulk of the operations triage group. So we have three areas, but the two primary areas are our SREs, our site reliability engineers. And these are individuals that, first off, are coming to us, many of them from the outside, from the private sector, with 20, 25 years experience. And it usually isn't in just one technology. I've got several people that have voice and data and have actually been coders all within their career. So they bring that to the table. What we use them for is to embed with those systems teams to help us better understand how we might be able to improve telemetry, for instance, or how might we better be able to write a code snippet that allows us to better tie into some of these APM tools. Now we tie that in with the other part of our team, which is our analytics group. So here we have a team of data analysts that are taking tons and tons and mounds of data that we're collecting from all these different systems and helping us better solve our problems. And it not only allows us to look back and say, how are we doing better? Where were we 6 months ago? But also, as we start to look in the future, and I think we'll talk about that in a little bit, is how can we use that data to better predict the problems that are coming up so we can start to avoid those as well.
I didn't realize you had the data analysis half of the equation as well.
It's the one without the other, and in many cases, if you look at textbook SREs, you'll see that a big part of what they do is looking at data, analyzing data, and using that to help them make decisions as they partner with the development teams or the operations teams. We've kind of put that a little on steroids. We've started to focus a lot on our engineers, but we've also focused a great deal with our analytics teams. We've got a sizable analytics team that pours through, in many cases, our incident data. So the data that we collect from every single one of the incidents that we have over a course of years, and start to use that information to help us predict better, as well as now starting to pull in a lot of that performance data. So we can better understand what normal behavior is, and using our data analysts to tell you what normal behavior is, it sure helps us all of a sudden start to pinpoint when we see abnormal behavior.
Yeah. Now, how does that group work with the kind of the enterprise command or the trouble ticketing and the support? I mean, do they talk with one another?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in fact, we have this very much brother-sister relationship with the Enterprise Command Center. So the folks that actually are the eyes on glass, as well as the ones that do all the instrumentation of all of our monitoring. So working with them, and in close proximity with that are the folks that support our service desk. And now we start to combine all the tools. So we as engineers do a great deal to help in many cases, how might we better instrument this system? And working very closely with the application owners and the three of us together deciding what might be the best approach that we want to take. Or if there's a new technology, I mentioned before synthetic monitoring. That was an opportunity for us to work very closely with the Enterprise Command Center, their instrumentation team, to come up with what might be that strategy and that methodology to start bringing in some of that as well.
Before we're going to get into synthetic monitoring in a second, and one other question I have. So now you've kind of have a closed circle where you're getting the data, you have the analytics to dive in and see what the data is telling you, and then you also, when something does break, with the enterprise command teams, you do the after action analysis. Now that you have the data, you can actually diagnose, hopefully, what caused it or what to avoid to prevent it from happening again next time.
Absolutely. And in fact, as our process goes, we have an incident, we resolve the incident, people are back up and working. That's where we've only just begun. And it's at that point that we work very closely with our incident and problem management teams, with the folks from the Enterprise Command Center, our SREs, and the application owners. And might be, if it's an infrastructure problem, it would have been an infrastructure owner. And we actually do all work together. We determine what was the cause of the incident. And then as a follow-up to that, what might we be able to put in place So in the future, when we see that, we'll know it sooner. And in many cases, we've been very successful with that. Or we recognize that there was this problem. What can we do to avoid that problem ever from happening again?
Sure.
And then once we put that in place, we continue to monitor and watch that. Were we successful? Because we might say that it might be this is the problem, and here's how we resolve it, but it might be 3 months later, that problem comes back again. Well, why did it come back? So we're constantly asking ourselves as scientists and engineers, why?
Sure.
That 5 whys, how do we finally get to that point of knowing that we've fully resolved it?
Sure. Now, can you give me some examples of how this has actually made things better or faster in terms of mean time to repair or bring back into service? Do you have any vignettes around that?
We have, sure. So I can speak, some of the applications, specifically without naming them, we've had several applications where we've been involved. So we've had our SREs involved with it, and they actually work very, very closely with the system owners. We built a lot of telemetry and helped them build some very specific telemetry, and from the performance logs. And then from that, be able to determine where they started to see a lot of similar issues or abnormal system behavior. We worked very closely with them, and then it turned around where we were able to actually improve the overall performance of that system. And in some of these are very large systems, some in fact which support the telehealth calls that we have with our veterans. And in some of those cases, we've seen improvements where we, it originally started out with, I think it was 1,400 pre-pandemic, to now being able to support well over 30,000 calls a day.
Wow.
And we do that with a great deal of quality coming through that system. So it was with the help, not the ownership, but with the help and partnering with that system owner. Other cases where we've had systems that were high and critical systems where they actually were down and people had to move back to pre-systems of things like Post-it notes and other things to be able to keep track of items, where we actually came in and helped them quickly figure out as a triage process what the problem was and what they needed to do to get their system back up and running to the performance levels that it needed to be. Once that was done, then it was the steps to what do you need to do to improve the layers of technology that you have and modernize some of those pieces to be able to improve it. And we're able to do that and help them very successfully as well.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Jay. We're going to take a break right now and then for our sponsors, and we'll be right back after this brief message. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We're here today talking with Jay Paluch from Department of Veterans Affairs, Office of Information and Technology. And we're going to continue with our interview about information technology triage, what it is and what it's not, some of the aspects of it, and how it helps the veteran experience. So, Jay, as we were leaving, we were talking about some of the analytics and the kind of the closed circle between understanding, detecting, and the heartbeats of data and observability of data from applications, and then analysis of that data, and then kind of closing the circle with trying to avoid trouble tickets or getting in front of them or predict outages based on this data. Can you give us some feel for how this data actually relates to the labor force in the VA and frankly the contracted labor force. How does what you do affect what they do?
So every day I'm reminded of some of our larger systems where we have, in many cases, 20,000, 25,000 people that are using. They're productively using those systems every day to support our veterans. If we have an outage for that system, just even consider it for a minute, right? There would be 20 to 30,000 lost minutes of productivity. If that outage is for 15 minutes or for half an hour where they couldn't use those systems, that now starts to compound into a lot of time that we're not able to help our veterans. And if we have a plan of how many we plan to help in a day, it makes it very difficult for us to meet that. Some people can say, well, let's just move it to overtime. Well, in many cases, you can't do overtime. The overtime has may already been planned, or there might have been other activities already planned for those people that are supporting our veterans. So it's very difficult to say, let's just go ahead and we can catch up, because there really isn't any catch up. The opportunity for us is to look back at that incident and say, what can we do to make sure that we remove it? Because always keeping in mind that always keep in mind that's 20,000 minutes. 20,000 minutes of lost productivity for 1 minute on just one system. Right. So everything that we can do, we always look to see what can we do to eliminate that. And you start by, in many cases, doing that, saying, what can we do to reduce it?
Right. And I love the point that you can't make that back. I mean, you can't, that is work that has to be pushed forward in time. It just doesn't disappear.
That's right.
That work has to be done. And it's like, the analogy of shoveling coal. You still have a pile of coal that has to be moved, right? Yeah. Move from here to there. It doesn't go away because you want it to. It only goes away by working through it. So avoiding outages that allows our workforce to be productive and effective is really critical. There's a significant tie between the IT and the labor force, and not only within VA, but also the supporting companies that support our veterans. All of that works like a finely tuned machine and has to continue to work every single day, every single minute.
Sure.
I love that 20,000 minutes. Think about that. It's amazing.
Keep it in mind every day.
Yep. You mentioned earlier this thing called synthetic monitoring. What is that? So
synthetic monitoring is a technology that's been around for a while. I consider almost one of my favorites when it comes to monitoring, because what it does is it brings us the closest to a real user being monitored. So almost as much as if I were to sit over to your shoulder with a stopwatch and see how long it took each and every transaction to occur. Synthetic monitoring allows us to basically create synthetic transactions and act as an end user would and measure every single step along the way. So if I bring up application ABC, how long did that take? I can measure that and see how long it takes. How long did it take me to log into ABC? How long did it take me to search for a folder? How long did it take me to display that folder? How long did it take me to close that folder out? Each and every one of those by themselves, that's nice information to have. Now consider our ability to take and do that across multiple locations. Now I have an opportunity not only to see how well that performs, and if I say I run that transaction every 15 minutes, which is really minuscule, but every 15 minutes I run that, I now start to get a baseline. What does normal look like by every single day and even every single night? I don't need to have someone there to run it. It runs automatically every 15 minutes.
I love the perspective here that we're looking at this from the end user perspective, because as a coder, I know that my application is running fine, and those darn users, they should be very happy with my application. But what you're looking at it from the user's perspective and modeling the user's experience, and they may take minutes, maybe hours, trying to fight their way through an interface or something that's not reflected in my application's data that it's throwing out. This telemetry says, hey, I'm alive, I'm happy, I'm working well, but the user may not be.
Exactly. Imagine this too, if I'm a user that comes in, I'm an early bird. Like you. And I come in at 6 o'clock in the morning, which in many cases we have a lot of folks on the East Coast that do. And I go to open up my system and use it, and I can't get in. I get a red banner error, for instance. Who do I call? What do? I've got to call my service desk, and now we've got a whole bunch of other people coming in, and they can't use it. if I have something that's actually out there actively monitoring the system at 2 o'clock in the morning, that gives me an opportunity to alert the people to let them know we have a system that needs help, that's not working as it should, and we can fix it in many cases before that happens. We refer to that as near misses. And every chance that we get to, we celebrate the near misses, and we always want to look to actually increase those. The more that we interfere with a problem before it actually interferes with our users, the better off we are.
Yeah, I think that's really a true instantiation of the presidential executive order on customer experience, because you're modeling that.
Yes.
You care about that from their perspective as opposed to from the coder's perspective of my application that should be up because it sounds to me that it's operating correctly, but maybe not from the user experience perspective. So I really think that's very special, and good on you for taking that approach.
We have an opportunity to see a lot more by using these tools. And you mentioned the coders, because this also gives us, and we've worked with our coders to have them actually see this. And they've found this probably to be some of the most important data and information we've been able to bring back to them. As you said, they may not know, but now we have data that shows them, and they can know, and it helps them recognize here's the areas they need to focus on.
You know, I think DevOps is empathy, and I think what you are building in APM and SRE is the bridge to empathy, because without that data, I, as a software person, make assumptions about what's happening on the hardware side and on the user side. By the same token, the infrastructure hardware people make assumptions about what should be happening in the software side and the user side.
Right.
But by having data that actually brings up and observes and lets you see the experience in the software, in the hardware, and the person, the people, the user, the veteran, now all of a sudden I can understand what's going on. I don't have to make assumptions, right? I have data that tells me what's going on. And once I understand what's happening to you as a user, that aha moment says, oh my gosh, my code isn't it may be as great as I think it is, but the user experience and I'm responsible for that, I'm partially responsible for that, isn't as good as it needs to be. So now I can be empathetic with the user, and I can be empathetic with the hardware infrastructure folks and understand, well, you know what, my code broke, not your hardware. So the idea of really thinking about the other partner in this ecosystem is empathy, and I think that's so important. And I think the data and the IT Triage Group enables that empathy in a way that could never have happened previously.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, one of the other pieces, as you were saying, that reminded me that the more that we work in this area and we do start to develop that empathy, our approach even has changed. We focus a lot more on, as you've heard of, SLOs, or service level objectives. And our ability to have a better understanding, not only is our system performing as it should, but is it doing what it should do for our customers and our users?
Well put.
And is it meeting? Can I write 50 prescriptions an hour and have them filled, or am I only doing 20?
Yeah.
And what might be the result of it? And being able to see the data from that lens, and also be able to provide it back to our business partners.
You bet.
It's, I would say, a newer world that we're starting to get ourselves into, and we find very exciting and help us to get the performance information.
That's absolutely fantastic. I'd like to talk a little bit now about the future. AI, machine learning. What are you seeing? What does the future hold, do you think? You've been in this business now, and you've seen it change over the years. What are you looking for in the next 5 years, would you say?
In the next 5 years, I would love to see the VA in a situation where the majority of the incidents that we have are actually resolved before they become incidents. And one of the big ways that we do that is recognizing through the data that we collect and using the systems that we have to recognize, and I've said it before, those abnormal behaviors. And looking back to say, we had that situation happen a couple of weeks ago, and we had it happen a couple of weeks before that, or something similar. And in those cases, here's exactly the steps that we took. If we have that well laid out, that gives us an opportunity now to automate that. and using that AI function, or what's now referred to in the industry, I think, as AI ops, is that ability to see, here's events that happen, here's how we know we can fix them, and we're going ahead and we're going forward and fixing them.
A great point, and it struck me as you were saying that, that the enterprise, the VA enterprise is huge. You know, it goes from
Yes.
Alaska to Puerto Rico, from Maine to the Philippines, and there's a lot of duplicative, I'll bet, activities happening. So something breaks in Florida and something very similar breaks in Oregon. You are required to take an enterprise perspective in order to correlate breakages or outages that are very, very similar, but operating independently in stovepipes, you can't do this correlation. But by capturing all that data, now you can begin to say, oh my gosh, there are things that are similar, and now I can apply these machine learning tools to correlate and actually get in front of that.
And our early steps in the APM tools, the investment that's been made there, the investments that have been made into the tools that we use to collect service desk tickets and incident data, will all play into that as we now have better technologies to be able to bring all that together and correlate it and look for those events amongst data that you might not normally put together. And giving us that opportunity to say, you know what, here is that one needle in a haystack of needles that I need to find and pull out, and that's the area that we need to fix. Haven't been able to do that before, and if I were to say 5 years from now, that would be where I would want to be, and I'd be very, very pleased to be able to be involved with that.
Yeah, so operational triage may be AI ops. And you know,
there's a lot of great teams already starting to work on AI ops within the VA, and I would love to very much partner with them. We all recognize how important it is. AI ops has been around, I think, for a little bit, but I think us wanting to make sure that we had a lot of other pieces in place first was the right approach.
Right, right. Final question, Jay.
Sure.
Thank you. How does what you do enhance the veteran experience and veteran outcomes?
I would say, first off, it's interesting because when I get together with my team, so we're about, between contract staff and government employees, about 40. There's usually one or two stories that we're speaking about, or one or two incidents that we're talking about in our data. And what I really, really love is the team recognizes that what they're working on had a very specific impact on a veteran or a veteran population. Every single time we talk through that. And I not only find that of value, but they're starting to recognize that everything they do has that single impact. Kind of like my mother-in-law, you know, as for voluntary services, everyone has that role to play in support of our veterans, and their service is just as important.
Yes, that's fantastic. Well, Jay, thank you very much for being here with me today and sharing your thoughts and your outlook. And frankly, the benefits of your career as veterans have benefited. And thank you for your leadership in this whole idea of triage and understanding the heartbeat of applications, because I think it also is a proxy for the heartbeat of our veterans. So thanks for being with me today. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you having me.
Okay, have a great day.
You too. Thanks, Bill.
And on behalf of 1E, we hope you found this interview informative. Mark?
At the VA, 1E Tachyon is designed to improve the overall experience of its 425,000 employees. For more information, please go to www.1e.com.